There is so much to say about this bike, but I made a promise to myself to try to keep it short and sweet. Before I get too far into the weeds, I'd like to thank Calgary Cycle City for giving me the chance to take this beast on the road. If you haven't been to their shop, it's worth the effort. The first thing you'll notice is that they aren't your typical bike shop. They aren't locked down to just one or two brands, or even just one type of rider. If you've been riding for years, or just getting into it, they can help you out with whatever you need. If you ever find yourself in the neighborhood, do me a favor and check them out. You'll be glad you did. Links to their info are down below. Now, if you're not familiar, Xero is a company out of Northern California. They are one of the leaders in full-size electric motorcycles. As their website shows, they aren't just a one-trick pony. They have several models that range from everything from dirt to street. The one I tested was called the SRS. It's a full-fairing, top-tier bike that I would call a half-step between a sport bike and a sport touring bike. With its more upright position, it'll remind you of a sport touring style of bike, but without the ability to go on epically long rides because of its range. And it's also fast off the line, just like a sport bike, but it doesn't have that same top-end speed that a full race bike has. So it's kind of like saying it's both the best and worst, depending on what you're looking for. So this is where you have to ask yourself, what kind of rider am I? If you want a bike to take on a long trip, or you want to go well over 200 kilometers an hour, then this might not be the bike for you. But if you want a city bike that will beat pretty much anything off the line with ease and last for hours between traffic lights, then I say it's a definite yes. I had so much fun on this bike that both times I took it out, I didn't want to bring it back. Over the last few years, I've noticed that while I still have a lot of fun riding, I don't squeal with utter joy anymore when I twist the throttle for my first ride of the year. That is until I jumped onto the Xero SRS and opened it up. I could not stop smiling the whole time. It was unlike anything I've ever ridden. But there are a few things you have to consider when moving from gas to electric. For me, I was concerned that the absence of gears and lack of shifting might make it boring. I'm happy to share it wasn't missed at all. I did, however, have a few moments of sheer terror when I reached for the clutch and found that it didn't exist. But I got used to that within a few minutes. And one other thing that you have to consider with an electric is that you can't spin up the engine and use the centripetal force within the engine to stabilize the bike when crawling in traffic. It's a trade-off that is pretty much unavoidable. One thing I noted was that the gas tank is actually a storage cubby. It won't fit your helmet, but it will fit a surprisingly large amount of stuff without the need for saddlebags. It's just effortless power. Just like most electric vehicles, you get 100% of the available torque at any speed. The traction control being on is pretty much the only reason I didn't tear the tires right off and pull wheelies every time the light went green. The sound it makes is subtle but distinctive. Whenever you hammer the throttle, it sounds like an alien spaceship or speeder bike from Star Wars. For someone like me, the option to dial in exactly what you want, either on the bike or through the smartphone app, is extremely appealing. You can make specific profiles and load them onto the bike through its Bluetooth connection. I joked many times that it felt like riding an iPhone. With the app, it kind of felt like it was actually true. That amount of torque came with an unexpected quirk, however. The throttle is a little touchy. I discovered this fact while hitting several bumps on the road. It made the bike a little jerky from my inadvertent input into the handlebars. That said, I'm sure with a little more time in the saddle, I would get used to it. When it comes to looks, I actually started to like this style quite a lot, but I confess the Street Fighter version looked the most dope in my opinion. The mirrors are very functional in where they're placed, but I can't help but think that they looked a little odd when I stood back. That said, I did not miss the chicken wings though, so there's that. While the batteries make it a little heavy for its size, you would never know it. This is one of the most flickable bikes I have ever ridden. It just dives into corners with ease and feels very planted throughout the turn. While the riding position was very comfortable, I found the seat a little hard. Being that you are sitting more upright, the cushion could use a little more padding if you plan on being in the saddle for a while. I am a huge fan of the regenerative braking on this bike. In normal traffic, it only lost around 10% while ripping around for about an hour downtown. I think it had a lot to do with hitting every light in sight. That completely changed, however, when I took it out on the highway. Without the stop-and-go traffic and the higher speeds, I noticed the battery level dropped quite a bit faster. I'll admit that I wasn't exactly being gentle with the throttle. That may have made a difference. but anyone who buys this bike is going to be tempted to do exactly what I did, so I feel my experience would be relatively typical. A full recharge takes 1 to 4 hours depending on which spec of onboard charger the bike has, as well as how powerful the charging station is. Of course it doesn't beat a gas-powered fill-up, but you already knew that before you got here. It's very well put together. I was looking for misaligned gaps or sloppy workmanship, and I gotta say, the bikes I saw in the shop were put together with care. Nothing on this bike felt cheap or an afterthought. My favorite part of this bike was the way they designed the outer casing of the motor itself. It's both unassuming and yet very beautiful. The front brake on the SRS is a beast. I think some of that comes from the Regenerative Braking, but even without it, these binders bite hard in the front. In the back, not so much. While I know the rule of thumb is that the rear is only 10% of the overall braking power, I'd say this bike has less. The upfront cost of this is the only reason I didn't immediately throw a wad of cash on the counter and keep going. At 33 grand, this bike is priced out of many people's reach. But for those who can't afford it, you will be getting something that no one else has on the road. That said, most states and provinces have rebates which significantly lower the cost of entry. And when you factor in that to fill it up costs only literal pennies, plus the extremely low maintenance, the price tag over time drops considerably. In short, if you have the option to take this bike for a test drive, do it. Now this is more than just a video on YouTube. This is a discussion. If you disagree with anything I said or have any questions, feel free to share them down below. If you're not subscribed, be sure to do so, as well as click the like button. Tapping that bell means you won't miss the next rocket flick when it becomes available. And until then, I'll see you out there.